Okay. Hey, who's this? Is this Wayne?
This is Ford. We have him
Ford?
on today.
Yeah, is that how would you, Ford? Is that how I should refer?
Wayne Adam Ford.
That's fine.
Okay, yeah. What do you want me to call you? Wayne or Ford?
Call me Ford.
Okay, well,
Call you Rod?
you can call me Rob, yeah.
Rod or Jeremy?
Yep.
Rob?
Yep. R-O-B.
A second.
Fantastic.
I was like Ron Jeremy.
No,
Ron Jeremy, but I'll call
no,
you.
definitely not Ron Jeremy. Rob, R-O-B. All right, cool. All right, so Laura, where do we want to start here?
You know what, Wayne? Why don't you just talk?
Well, here, let me just do an intro here now. So, Laura, we just connected on to the podcast here, and Laura has Wayne Adam Ford on the phone right now. And so, Wayne, thank you for coming on. And then, so Laura, how do you want to direct this right now?
Well, we listened to a tape I have of you, Ford. We're talking about Bittaker. After the show, you weighed in about Bittaker. And I mean, it was really profound the way you read into him watching that show. I mean, you were on him. You knew exactly his thought process. I mean, you had him pegged perfectly. And, for the viewers, anytime I have an active serial killing case, I go to Ford about it for him to weigh.
Yeah.
So,
and for our listeners, I know we just kind of jumped into this because Wayne's on the phone and he's got limited time. But Wayne, why don't you tell everybody, who you are and where you currently are?
Okay, my name is Wayne Adam Ford. I'm currently at California Men's Colony in San Luis Obispo, California. And I turned myself in 1998 after going insane for a year, and some people got hurt. I'm not going to be very specific about that, but it was pretty high profile at the time, mostly because I was a nut.
You have 60 seconds remaining.
Oh, is he going to be able to call back?
Yeah, he can call back.
Okay.
Yes, I'll call back. As soon as they cut us off, I'll call back.
Okay, cool.
What was I going to say? So I've studied what it was that made me who I became. And in the process of doing that, I had to find out what normal was. So I figured out what normal people are, how they act, why they act, what motivates normal people to do normal things. And then I compared my abnormal actions and to plenty of consulting with doctors over about a 25-year period. I figured out what my issues were, my problems.
Okay. So just to get everybody up to speed here, I know we just jumped right in here because Wayne was on the phone with Laura from Men's Colony, right? Is that where he is?
He's one of the last people to leave death row.
Death row. So just give people just a little bit of background on Wayne while we're waiting for him to call back.
So Wayne Adam Ford was a truck driver, and he's one of the rare serial killers that actually turned himself in. He killed 4 sex workers. I think one was just a runaway. And he turned himself in, and he had a breast, female's breast in his pocket. And I'm sorry, you don't.
Yeah, you don't go into the details of the crimes. Yeah, no, it was a horrific thing. Yes. And so now you've been talking to him for a while.
10 years.
10 years. And so he's been, it sounds like when he was leading up to this conversation, is he calling you right back now?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll just jump right back in.
Global Tel Link, you have a prepaid call from an incarcerated individual at the California Men's Colony, San Luis Obispo, California. This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded. You have a prepaid call. You will not be charged for this call. To accept this call, say or dial. Thank you for using Global Tel Link.
Hey, Ford.
So it became clear to me that there were some commonalities between certain types of criminal behavior and other kind of mental health issues. And these commonalities became obvious to be part of the autism spectrum, and in particular the autism spectrum that's known as Asperger's, which is a high-functioning autistic person, usually with very high IQs. The problem is these same high IQs are a benefit of Asperger's. The deficit of Asperger's is the inability to grow up socially like a normal person does. Where we happen to be, me with Asperger's included, happen to be socially retarded. This is devastating for anybody who wants to get close to somebody, and hard to maintain relationships. These are the very people who go insane and commit these atrocities because of what Mother Nature puts men in particular under a great deal of stress to procreate, and without realizing what's driving you, because you're socially retarded, emotionally retarded is another way to put it. You do things that you have urges to do without the actual knowledge of why you're doing it. And so you have people that are so socially retarded that they don't have any empathy at all, and they can't have a normal relationship because they can't figure out how. And so their fantasy life becomes rich, but they become very controlling, and eventually something puts them over the edge, and they start committing crimes. And for every one that goes over that edge, there's probably thousands that never reach that point, but have many other problems that are probably not socially acceptable. Plenty of failure. Anyway, so after seeing all this, I follow a lot of the
Wait a minute. Can I just ask you a quick question, Ford?
Yeah.
Real quick. So this is something that you're basically talking about your condition. You have Asperger's condition, and when were you diagnosed with this?
It's about 10, 12 years ago. It's usually a childhood thing, but if you don't have parents that care, then you probably won't get diagnosed because they'll just consider you broken in some way or off in some way, and so they never find out. But it takes a good doctor, patient doctor, and a intelligent doctor with plenty of counseling to figure out what your problems are. And so I figured out I have autism, Asperger's in particular. But when I see the pattern that it creates, I see the same pattern in two groups of people that make the news fairly often, and that is serial killers and high school spree shooters. All have the same basic traits that would be consistent with Asperger's, and it's no mystery to me why they go insane. It's because we are social creatures, but if we happen to be socially inept, then we're rejected. That rejection causes poor mental health, and eventually may cause someone to lash out. The young kids who do the spree shooting in school, they don't see past their nose. They don't see past their present they don't see a changing condition. They think that they're going to be ostracized their entire life, and they think they're going to be picked on their entire life. So
this call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
they're trying to kill themselves. They're committing suicide at the same time. If you look at the information for the guy that shot at Donald Trump, he was committing suicide. And if you look at his history, you're going to find out he he probably was autistic, to tell you the truth, but he probably had Asperger's. Anyway, that guy knew he wasn't going to survive his attempt to kill the president.
Hey, Laura, let me just ask Laura real quick. Laura, is there any data on like the percentage of people that have autism, Asperger's, that become violent criminals?
I don't think they just started doing studies on it, because I just reached out to somebody because Ford has asked me to look into this.
Yeah.
We do have an expert coming on, and the expert does want to talk to you, Ford. But it's relatively new. And we did have a long talk. I want to wait until he comes on.
All right. Well, hey, Ford, for when you first figured out after you were diagnosed with Asperger's and autism, was that the kind of aha moment for you where you realized you started really wanting to find out what made you do the things that you did, the horrible things you did?
Well, the way it started was I have a very scientific mind, so I use basic scientific principles to figure things out. And what I had to do before I took myself as an example, I had to get a baseline of what normal is. So I had to study people who are under normal circumstances, why they do what they do. And once I figured out that, I had to compare my behavior to normal behavior, and understanding why I did what I did, and comparing it to normal people, it became obvious I had some issues that made me different, that made me neurologically different. And matter of fact, they call it neurologically divergent is the term they use now for autism and Asperger's. So it's in studying this over 20, 25 years that I put all the pieces of the puzzle together. And then after I did that and figured out my problem, I started seeing the same exact problem on all these high-profile cases, and I could see ahead of time the things that they were going to find. And the doctor I was working with started believing in me because the same thing was happening with him. The things that we discovered we were finding in the new cases that were coming up. We're seeing systematically, the same conditions pop up time and time again, which leads us to believe they had Asperger's also.
So when we look at that, I mean, Asperger's would be, nature, right? You're born with it. Or any other underlying mental illness, disability, or, personality disorder. So what do you think?
Did they know if you're actually born with it? I don't know a whole lot about Asperger's other than I know it's a condition.
Whatever
Or is it something that
disability, I mean,
could
just
have something that happened to do with the pregnancy too? Could that cause it?
No, but I'm saying besides for disability, mental illness, anything you might be born with or genetically inherited, something of that nature, that's all genetics, that's all nature. My question is, keeps beeping in. My question is, okay, so yeah, you might have something genetic, and you might have something that comes with that, whether it be a disability, whether it be, mental illness, or whatever the case is. How do you, even if you have that underlying, where does the nurture come into play? What happens during the nurture, the upbringing, the childhood that brings on the violence is the real question.
Well, the problem is they don't know. They don't know whether it's nature or nurture, or it's always a combination of both. There's no way to quantify how much of each. So at this point, it's still a mystery until they can do some study of in something like the functional MRI or some other studies that give hints as to what's going on in the brain. They won't be able to tell that, but there are some patterns and some clues, and a lot of the times the nurture features are there. The inability for the parents to give proper nurturing to a child is there, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't something that also was innate in the person also. It might take both. It might take both something that is pre-birth and something that is after birth that creates might be the recipe for the monster.
Now, hey, Ford, I remember so have you always felt this way, even when you were a kid? You have, okay. Because I remember reading a little bit about you, and there was one point, and I think Laura and I were talking about this on another podcast, that you had some sort of head trauma at one point.
Right. Yes, I did. I was actually killed.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
I pulled over on the I-5 freeway for an accident, and as I was tending to a victim, I had my then girlfriend go make a phone call. This was before cell phones were out, and when she got back, I was missing. But what she didn't know was the car swerved off the road and hit me. A drunk driver kept going and knocked me over the car and over a fence. So when they were cleaning up the area, they found me and they had me as DOA. So after 11 days in the hospital in a coma, I was brought back, and I had major closed head injury, and I never really had any follow-up other than plastic surgery on my head injury. But I did start showing, after that, I did start showing some symptoms that are well known today because of the studies in the NFL and the closed head trauma injuries in the Middle East.
The CTE.
Right. So those studies indicate that what I was going through was normal for somebody with closed head trauma. So I've talked to people who dealt in that field, and though it wasn't recognizable at the time, it's recognizable now. And so too, like the Asperger's, if you don't have anybody who knows about it at the time, then you probably wouldn't get diagnosed. And of course, if you're not diagnosed, you can't do anything about it. But it's been misdiagnosed for, up until recently. And the connection I made prior to anybody else I know of making the connection. And now that I've been talking about it, it has been out for the last 20 years or so, and people are starting to look in that direction.
Yeah, Boston College has been looking into it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
You have 60 seconds remaining.
Is he going to be able to call back one more time, or?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I'd be curious. Did you do anything violent before the head trauma, or was it after the head trauma?
It was after, right, Ford?
It was after. Yeah.
Yeah.
How soon after was your first violent? How soon after was your first violent act?
Oh, probably within a year.
Yeah. Did you have any urges before the accident?
No, I didn't. As a matter of fact, I was the opposite. I tried to be
set him up.
Yeah. Interesting. I remember like when we talked to him that first time,
Mhm.
and I heard about that story when he told you, when we recorded him on the Zoom, that when I heard about his head trauma, I mean,
Yeah.
head trauma does, you know,
Yeah,
like
especially with the frontal lobe, and his is all frontal lobe damage too.
well low. And that same thing, like you said, like the NFL players at CTE. I mean, Junior Seau, who was a linebacker for, the Patriots and also the Chargers, who had a long career. I mean, it drove him insane. I mean, he basically was like, and he got very violent after he was done playing football, and then eventually he knew he was going to. I think he I don't know if he drove his car off. He wrote a letter saying, "Please study my brain," and I think he committed suicide. I can't remember how he did it.
Yeah, I have to get the forms to Ford because I want to get him to sign over his brain, and all of them actually, to get him to
Yeah, because because like you said, he's the only one. Well, not that we know of. I mean, I'm one of the few serial killers.
You have a prepaid call from
Wayne.
who turned
an
himself in.
incarcerated individual at
Right.
the California Men's Colony, San Luis Obispo,
It's very
California.
unique.
This call
It's
and your
not
telephone
often.
number will be monitored and recorded. You have a prepaid call. You will not be charged for this call. Thank you for using Global Tel Link.
Ford, before we jump back in, Rob and I were just talking, and, you are one of the very unique cases of someone who turned themselves in. And can you just, elaborate more on that? Like, what was your thought process about that and why you did it?
Yeah, I will. First of all, I'm going to finish what we were talking about.
Okay.
When I was a young kid, my father didn't think I was aggressive enough, and he thought I was a bit of a coward. So I was a bit different. After the accident, I slowly but surely became aggressive and fearless. So the accident did do some damage to my frontal lobe and to my executive functioning. And I changed quite a bit. I became sexually aggressive and sexually also very I don't know what the word would be. My sexual appetite increased a great deal.
Yeah.
That is common with the frontal lobe damage too.
Right. Now, as far as turning myself in goes, when I figured out it was me that was harming people, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing because it would take a long time, but I didn't think it was me at first, and when I realized it was me, I decided to leave society. I didn't want anybody to get hurt again. But I was reading the Bible, and there's a passage in the Bible, Luke 6:46, that says, "Why do you call me Lord, Lord, but not do what I say?" And I was convicted by that, and I knew I had to turn myself in regardless of the consequences, which I thought would have been probably the death penalty. I didn't think that anybody was going to believe the truth because I couldn't believe it myself. So I figured I was going to have to accept the consequences, and I turned myself in.
Yeah. Well, when was that moment where you realized you had to, like, was it a build-up moment where after you have had a violent act, would you feel a certain way, or you would maybe start feeling empathy or sympathy for what you've done, or guilt?
No, it wasn't like that. I felt guilt because I realized that it had to have been me, but I don't remember the actual incident that when the event happened. I don't remember that time. Matter of fact, it's not the first time that something happened where I don't remember what happened.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
These, I think they're called fugue states, where you're in a state of mind where you're not really conscious about what's going on. anyways, I can't explain those. As a matter of fact, I don't care, really. The consequences of my actions wouldn't change depending on why or how it happened. The consequences are still the consequences. And people paid the price for that. And I should also pay the price for that. And have been ever since I turned myself in. And will until the day I die. I happen to believe in God, so I'll be forgiven for this. But I also believe that the people who I harmed are in heaven. So I have some relief from the guilt. So not completely. I won't have that until I leave this planet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds like you've, now are on a path not only to redemption, but also of understanding. You want to find out what made you do that. And it sounds like you've analyzed that pretty well.
I'm pretty well satisfied with what happened. I would like to help stop it from happening again, but I just don't have the ability. I don't have the ability to get the message out. I have talked to FBI. I have talked to a lot of doctors, and I have had good reaction, but nothing that's going to make anything big move.
Yeah.
So I think I'm just a voice in the wilderness.
I don't think so, Ford. I think
But,
you've talked to, you've been talking with me for 10 years. You've been talking to Berger. You've talked to law enforcement. I think you're making more movement than you realize.
Yeah. I mean, your message is going to get out.
Right.
I have a question for you. Are you on when they diagnosed you with Asperger's, did they put you on any medication or anything?
Yeah. Along with Asperger's, I'm bipolar. I think bipolar is a symptom of actually it's a symptom of head injury and loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
I can't really go into everything because it will take too long.
That's fine. I'm just curious if are you currently on medication?
Yes, I am. And
Okay.
I will have to be the rest of my life.
And it's helping you, obviously.
It's a miracle. Yeah.
What are you going to say, Laura?
You've said something pretty profound to me. Do you remember what you actually say it to me all the time? I don't know if you remember specifically. You know what I'm referring to? When suicide.
Oh, suicide and homicide?
Mm-hmm.
Say that again. What is it?
Suicide and homicide are closely related.
He always says to me, when suicide doesn't occur, homicide occurs.
I remember you telling me that when he said that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were suicidal back then, you felt?
No. No. I was too chicken. I have been suicidal, but I couldn't carry it out. So, and that's why you see these kids that shoot up a high school or something. They don't carry out their own suicide, but they make it happen. These are intelligent people who can manipulate people if they want to.
Do you think there's enough outreach for people, with homicidal urges?
No, there is not. But it's not just that. It's people who know what they're supposed to do afterwards. If you notice.
Did we lose them? I don't know if he's coming back or what.
What is it? Because normally he didn't get a warning.
They reset every hour, so hopefully he can call back. If not,
Yeah.
I mean, they might go back they might shut off the phones there at 8.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds like, I mean, he sounds a lot like Marlowe a little bit, like someone who has a good grasp on, why they became killers.
Right.
Not that it's an excuse. He's not making excuses for it, but at least he's trying to figure out. I mean, I would imagine that anybody who kills someone, they're not right in their mind at some point. I mean, they're still, but some of them never get right in their mind.
No.
You get like the BTKs. I mean, he'll never, he's never changed.
Right.
And then, but you have him, he sounds like, number one, he has obviously remorse.
Mm-hmm.
He's looking for redemption.
He is.
He's looking for ways to figure out what made him do that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He's not looking for sympathy.
No.
He knows where he needs to be. He knows,
mm-hmm.
So it's interesting to hear it come from that perspective.
It is. And he's been helping. I know he's been working very close with Dr. Berger out of San Quentin, and he has worked with the FBI and law enforcement myself, and just like Marlowe, it's a lot of them, when I sit down to do an interview, and even Bittaker at times, they're kind of mystified by their own actions. So even when I'm doing the interview, it's almost an exploration into their psyche.
It's like they can't believe they actually did it.
Like they're just trying to, like, just like Ford was saying, like, I'm trying to figure it out, how it all transpired, like how I got to where I'm at. So when you're talking with them and you're going through everything, it becomes an exploration, and that's why I'll start with childhood and we'll go through, we'll canvas everything, because we're trying to figure out how it happened. I'm trying to figure it out as much as sometimes they are as well,
It's no, he was very frank.
Mm-hmm.
He's very candid.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, he's got nothing to really hide.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a killer. He was that, and he's behind bars, and he says he'll die there. I mean, it's like, that's his.
But I think what's interesting, and especially for, the viewers too, is now you kind of get to see, you're starting to see the dichotomy. You've gotten to hear Marlowe, you've now gotten to hear Ford, and then you're listening to the tapes of Gargiulo.
Yeah.
And it's like, this guy's just like, I'm going to deny till I die and play games. But then you have this other spectrum where these guys are like, Marlowe is talking about electroshock therapy, how that's helped him.
Yep.
Ford's been going to doctors, the frontal lobe. You see this spectrum of, because people are like always grouping serial killers together, and I'm always like, each one is so unique and different.
Oh yeah, they're all different.
You're starting to see.
I mean, they have similar qualities on what makes them, motivates them to do it. I think the Asperger. I think based on when you said BTK sounded like he was a little Asperger's.
They all do, almost, in a sense. And the big thing that I have, and I've had many conversations about this with Ford, is the thing is, it's so closely aligned to psychopathy. So when I'm like, well, they're like, I don't feel right. Like, I didn't feel socially inept in that situation because I wasn't feeling the empathy. That's where you got to stop and go, okay, could that be autism, Asperger's, or is that psychopathy? That's where I go, it's so closely related. And this is what forensic psychologists struggle with, is how do you determine something where there's very similar features and traits within something, and what exactly, are you seeing or encountering, and where's the distinction between them, type of thing.
Yeah.
And I'm not
like, from because the last time I saw him speak is when we recorded in our house when we did the Zoom call with him.
Mm-hmm.
And he sounds much clearer.
Well, he
did before.
Is up and down. Like when I talk to Ford, I'm always like, how are you feeling, like, mentally?
Oh, okay. So it's like a fog sometimes he gets into.
Yeah, and they've with the transfers, it's been crazy. I wish
Mhm.
he had called so we could have gotten into the transfers because he was one of the last ones on San Quentin's death row. But he's been, they've been upping and changing all their dosage on San Quentin's death row because of the
Got it.
transfers. Because obviously these guys are scared they're going to die. They're going to mainline.
Mhm.
So it's been just pure chaos in the California prisons, this year alone. Um, so it's been a really huge adjustment for all of them.
How long has he been there at Men's Colony now?
Just a couple weeks now, but
Okay.
I'm really surprised. I'm very, very shocked. Because
Shocked at what?
that he's been able to transition so well. Because
Mhm.
he was the first one who called me and said, "I'm not leaving, I'm killing myself." That was his first response to the transfers. And he told
Mhm.
everyone, "I'm taking myself out." He was telling, the medical professionals there, I'm just not leaving, I'm gonna kill myself. And this was common with a lot of them, but he was saying it up until the end. Like, I'm not leaving,
Mhm.
I'm killing myself. It
What
was,
made him not do it?
towards the very end when God, when was I there till April? Um,
Mhm.
I would say no, it'd probably be summer. I want to say around summer was when he finally started like going, okay, well, it's gonna happen. Like he's like, he started saying stuff like, should I go to Vacaville? Should I go to Men's Colony? And I'm like, okay, well, now he's opened up to actually, open to the idea. So
Mhm.
Berger obviously kept him here, back at San Quentin where Marlowe is still at.
Mhm.
Clearly, even Berger thought he was well enough to go because I was really shocked Ford went before Marlowe. Um,
Is Marlowe going to end up at Colony too?
that's where right now it's looking, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And what are the conditions like there?
I was just asking Ford about that, and he said it's dirty, run down. And I'm like, well, that's all the prisons in California.
Yeah.
um, and he was like, the food's better. So that was all the description I got for Men's Colony.
And he has to have a cellmate, right?
They give them, they're doing it different in every prison. I think they get a couple months or it's dependent upon, I think each one is doing it different. But that's been the biggest thing is they don't want to sell up. And I think these guys should have at least a year to be isolated by themselves in a cell. I don't think you should move death row inmates off of death row if you can't, put them in a prison where they can have at least a year to
Transition.
and especially when it's a very dangerous situation. You're taking these guys that have been there 40, 50 years, you're putting them into general population, then you're throwing someone in a cell with them. And these are dangerous criminals, obviously on death row in a new situation. And it's a recipe for disaster. And I don't think
Have they had any kind of near misses yet?
there's been some murders.
Oh, there has. So some people on death row were killed.
There's been some rapes. There's been murders. Yeah. Yeah. They've been keeping a lot of this quiet, but yeah. I know there was one guy beaten until like unrecognizable.
Somebody was transferred out of death row into another prison.
Hmm. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's
They're keeping everything very quiet. I think last I heard, it was a lot of murders. But nothing's hitting the news. But you can't, the way it's being done is you can't just throw them. You can't just go to a zoo and open up every cage and think, oh, okay, this is just going to work out on its own. It creates a dangerous environment for not just the inmates, but the correctional officers, the prison personnel.
yeah, because they got to get in between it.
Exactly. So it's yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Wild.
I was wondering when. I mean, I didn't know. Yeah, because I haven't heard anything in the news.
I've been hearing stuff only because I've been in the prisons, but yeah, nothing's been reported. It's been kept very quiet.
Well, I think it's just like a dirty little secret no one wants to talk about, and it's
Right, because this is the big plan to rehabilitate, which is an amazing thing to do. But like I've said from the beginning, it needs to be done properly. And you can't take somebody off a death row and throw them in with a general pop with a cellie First of all, there are people, there's fathers in jail, there's grandfathers in jail, for like DUIs or, sometimes just like stupid property
I
crimes.
know.
You can't put them in with this serial killer who just got off death row and force them into a little cage together. And one of the death row inmates was talking to one of the caseworkers, and he actually, what he said was so true. She said to him, "You have to have a cell," and he said no. And then he goes, "You take me home with you. What do you think would happen? Would you take me home with you?" And she's like, "No." And he's like, "Right. And what do you think would happen?"
Yeah.
What do you think's going to happen?
He's not getting out, so
Right.
He's going to get his way,
Right.
regardless. And
you're creating a very dangerous situation. If you didn't have the room to move these guys off, they shouldn't have been moved off in the first place. If you can't,
well, they're not going to make any more room. I mean, they just evaporated.
Death row.
Death row.
Mm-hmm.
Have they done any of the changes yet over that place?
They put a coffee shop in.
Where'd they put the coffee shop?
Like on East Block, I think. I wish Ford would call back because he could call me and said they're knocking the wall down to put the coffee shop in. And I was like, they're putting a Starbucks in?
Is it for the correctional officers?
I think so. He said the inmates are going to run it.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They put a coffee. That's the first step to the $380 million that they're spending up there?
Yeah.
Is that what it is? It was like 280 million or 300 million?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, hundreds of millions of dollars.
It was something, and it got cut down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So it's those figures, about 300, then they cut it down. Yeah, they're putting something on the rooftop. I heard it was an ice cream bar.
Mm-hmm.
And then I know about the coffee shop,
Yeah.
ice cream bar. I know there was plans to put the university, turn it into like a college campus, put the university right there on grounds. But I heard from with the budget being cut, they took that off.
Like what kind of, like for the university for the prison?
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. It's amazing that, and like no one wants to talk about this and no one knows what's going on.
No. There's a couple people like whistleblowing I know about, but
well, there was that one correctional officer.
There is a correctional officer.
What happened to him? That he just kind of disappeared?
I've been talking to him actually.
Oh, you have?
Behind the scenes, yeah.
Okay.
That's where I've been getting a lot of my information from.
Oh, okay.
He's been telling me about some of the stuff, and yeah. Yeah, but he's been very vocal about what's happening and the murders that.
Wow. And what is he doing now? He's obviously not a correctional officer. He's doing something else.
No, he's doing something else.
I remember the first time I went in and I was like, I couldn't believe that, they don't get paid much.
No.
They got to be there for a while.
40 hours a week. I mean,
yeah, in order to make some money, you got to be there for a certain period of time, like, to really.
When I was straight out of college, I worked as a counselor inside of a prison. And I mean, it's brutal because it feels like you live there.
Yeah.
It feels like you live in prison. It feels like you're in prison.
Well, you can't leave once you're in there.
Right.
You're there all day.
All day. Mm-hmm.
It's like being in school, but with bars and razor wire.
Oh, yeah. And then you work a double shift.
4 times worse.
Hours. Yeah. You're just trapped in there. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's too bad he couldn't come back. I think we could probably get him on again. He'll
definitely come on.
He wants to get his word out, and I think what he has to say is worth hearing. I mean,
an expert. I don't know if you saw that email chain. This is a specialized expert in California who is currently researching into this autistic or, Asperger's. He's doing really groundbreaking research into all of this. And
was he supposed to come on today?
Not today. Remember I sent him the questions and he said, let me prepare for this. And I said, take your time. And I have to check back with him. But I had told him.
Oh, that guy, the guy from Stony Brook?
Mm-hmm. So
okay, yeah. He wants to come. He wants to talk to Wayne.
He wants to talk to Wayne too. So I thought we'd have him on. He can talk about his, research and then what he's found. And some of the stuff he's talked to me about, and I never considered it. And he said, people who have Asperger's and who have autism, if they, end up in prison, they can't read social cues like the rest of us. And imagine being in prison and you can't read social cues.
Mm-hmm.
Your survival depends on that.
Also, the social cues in prison are all screwed up and skewed. It's all manipulation.
Right. I mean, literally a riot or a stabbing can happen any second. When I'm
it just, everything seems very kind of stoic, and you hear like sporadic conversation and laughter, but it's really kind of the energy is so, it swirls. I remember being in the yard at Corcoran and also Folsom. Right. Folsom's yard's even tight, like smaller. Mm-hmm. So everybody's on top of each other, old Folsom. Mm-hmm. And like they actually used us. I was there shooting for a lockup, and we were just interviewing like the pastor, and it was just innocuous interview on the yard. And they used us as a diversion, the camera crew as a diversion.
I remember that story.
Yeah, and set some guy up, some older Mexican mafia guy, I think northern Mexican mafia guy, and he wasn't keeping up with their calisthenics or whatever, and he was weak or something like that. Mm-hmm. So they had the two younger guys like basically take him out in like 30 seconds. I mean, they didn't kill him, but they put him in a coma like in 30 seconds.
I mean, they stabbed like lightning speed. It's insane.
They didn't even have any stab. They just knocked him down and started kicking his head.
Yeah.
They just started stomping and kicking his head, and he was like, within 30 seconds, he was in a coma.
Yeah. Yeah, it can happen that quick too.
It did.
One time and they were stabbing like over you, like they were using the cameras, like the second you started rolling and they were stabbing literally over you.
Yeah, not me. I was right over the game. I mean, one of the yard fights. Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, they definitely use you as a diversion. Mm-hmm. Because what else can they do? Because they knew all the correctional officers were looking at us and watching us.
Mm-hmm. They know.
Yeah. Bizarre. It's a bizarre feeling. I can't. But as far as Asperger's and not being able to read social cues in prison, that would be a detriment.
I am in the slaughter. I mean, really. I mean, you have to be able to be on point, and
Well, imagine, you still. I mean, they did take people's lives, so they do have that killer instinct. They have the ability, even though I would imagine if he was, push come to shove, I mean, he would have to kill someone if it came up either them or him.
No, of course. And I think that survival instinct is in all of us. And I think that would happen.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's Darwin's theory.
Yeah.
Playing out. That's really what prison is. But then there's people with autism too, who, are in there who haven't committed violent crimes.
Yeah.
Like lesser crimes. And, you got to put that into consideration as well. And I think a big breakdown with the prison system too is everyone's just lumped together. And I've always said this. And I think, for first-time offenders, they should all be isolated because they call, prison the college for criminals.
Yeah.
Isolating, the first-time offenders. They're not learning from the career criminals. They're not going to be, around them, hearing the stories, learning the tips, the tricks from them. If you isolate the first-time offenders, I think they can be rehabilitated much more easier if they're away from these career criminals. And, somebody who has underlying issues like Asperger's or autism or mental illness, because, there's some severe mental illness. They just throw them in prison. They're not even the psych units.
Yeah.
Like those people, like Wayne was saying, when you're neurodivergent, you have to take that into consideration, especially when you're in a dangerous environment where the climate could change at any second. Those people need to be protected. They are neurodivergent. They have a disability, and that needs to be taken into consideration as well.
Yeah, but it doesn't sound like they, obviously have the resources or the manpower to do that, although they have plenty of the tax dollars.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing I don't understand. I mean, it's like, they talk about mental health all the time, and the places where they need mental health, especially people who are going to come out of prison, they're not all going to stay there forever.
Right.
But, It's strange.
Yeah.
Right. And I think a lot of it has to do with the person's, like, when we did our, the wrongful conviction documentary, and, when Valentino, we watched him get out. I mean, he was in there for 27 years.
Wow.
He was in there from 18, for a long time, since he was 18 years old. And when he came out, he was fairly normal. I was surprised, and he was a maximum security prison, because he was in there for murder that he didn't do.
Wow. I mean, that is a long time, though.
But he became like this world-class artist in there. And that's what I think kind of saved him.
Yeah. Yeah.
He started drawing with pencils, like, colored pencils.
Mhm.
And he would draw like golf, murals of golf courses from, like, the only thing he had was magazines from Golf Digest. So he would just draw the golf courses.
Right.
That's what started him. But yeah, I mean, I can't imagine, going in and coming out sane.
No, I mean, it would be really hard. I mean,
Very strong individual.
look at what happened, like COVID, where we were, told to stay home. Like, everybody just lost their mind.
Yeah.
Imagine being inside an institution. Like,
They had at Georgetown, when we were shooting there for the wrongful conviction documentary, they had this display in the student center, which kind of simulated, it was like you go in there in this room, it was about the size of, like when they put you in isolation, like, with no windows or anything, like, and it gives you the feeling, it creates the aura of what it feels like to be like in, in the hole,
really?
put you in there, and like it really kind of gives you all the psychological effects and how your brain starts breaking down. Like when you don't start seeing, sunlight, and you're looking at the same thing over and over again,
Mhm.
and how the walls really start closing in, all the psychological, all the different stages after so many days, 10 days, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
And it was pretty bizarre.
Yeah, our brains need stimulation.
Yeah.
Literally. Even I was just talking to a psychologist, and, she was treating people with Alzheimer's and dementia. And she goes, I just give them puzzles because the brain just needs to be active and firing, and it helps. And you just being in, what you're saying, like just, the hole, and there's nothing, absolutely nothing, no sunlight, no.
Well, even the ones that they go in I remember the security housing units, like up in Corcoran and all of California, they just, everything's push button.
Mhm.
So they'd have no contact. They just let them out like gerbils in the cage, and they let them out into the yard, which is about the size of a half of a handball court. And the walls are so high that all they can see is just the sky. So there's no horizon line.
Yeah.
So it's directly above them. So they don't, they may see, depending upon the time of day, they may have the sun or they may not. And they only get an hour.
Yeah. It's wild.
So 23 hours in those cells are just cinder blocks.
Yeah.
Cinder blocks. So they're designed to be horrible, uncomfortable places.
Mhm. I mean, I think 30 years from now, or how many years it takes or whatever, I think we're going to look back on it the way we look back on now, how we used to, run all the psych units and mental hospitals, especially, on the East Coast, the tactics they were doing to these people, and
yeah. I mean, my grandmother was, she occupied one of those for like close to 30 years.
Oh, wow.
It was in a place called Creedmoor.
Wow.
In New York, which they closed down.
Yeah.
And because of all the conditions and stuff like that. But she was there for a long time.
Yeah. It's,
I mean,
it's really torture.
But they don't have mental institutions anymore. They don't think they closed because of that. The way they were treated, they were all closed down. Instead of revamping them and coming up with better guidelines and stuff, like, as opposed to just, those horrid conditions. I mean,
Right.
but that's, it's hard. We can't even get like simple things done.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's going to be true. Well, this has been very enlightening. I'm sorry that Wayne Adam Ford got cut off. I had a bazillion other questions for him.
I know. Well, you know what? If any viewers out there have questions, we'll get him on for another episode. But let's have some viewers. If you guys have any questions, just write them in, and we'll ask him on air. We'll get him back on. And I think we should do another one with Marlo, because Marlo is the last guy standing pretty much at San Quentin.
He's still there?
He's still there, so we can get an update from him. But if anybody has any questions for him for Ford or Marlo, write them in. I did just recently get an update on Gargiulo. He's just a bat out of hell, causing chaos at Cook County.
Oh, really?
What to do with him? Yeah.
Is the IC's by himself, or does he have a cellmate?
They're throwing him all around. Like, they keep throwing him in the psych unit and throwing him out. They don't even know what to do. And an FBI profiler just reached out to me and asked me what was my take on him. And I was like, he's all over. Because they said to me, he's all over the map. And I was like, yeah, no, he's all over the map. And they said, they're like, I've never seen a serial killer like him before. And I was like, in all my years, neither have I, too. So we were just kind of comparing notes about him.
Yeah. Did he go in and talk to him?
They talked to him back in California.
Got it.
But yeah, the news is that he's just running hell right now in Cook County. They don't even know what to do with him. And I was like, yep.
Just get that trial over and get him,
I don't know what they're going to do.
I know the family needs a trial.
They do. I
need a trial, but it's just like, why just
get it done.
You got to get the process done.
I know. Hopefully it ends soon for them, and they get the justice.
I'd be curious in who's going to keep him, Illinois or California.
No, it's probably gonna. I wonder too, what they're gonna do with that.
I don't know. Stateville. Did you ever see Stateville? That prison?
Mm.
That's a pretty bad prison in Illinois.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's all fancy. It looks like a Thunderdome. It's like this dome, and it's crazy looking.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I do have some inmates out in Illinois. Some serial killers I've interviewed out in Illinois. Actually. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, all right. Well, listen, thanks for this. Let's see if we can circle back with Wayne Adam Ford, maybe get him on again.
We'll have him back on with that expert, definitely. And if viewers, you guys have any questions for either of them, we'll have them back on and ask them your questions too.
All right. All right, Laura. I'll see you next week.
All right. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye, guys.